With me today is my colleague, Brian Walzell, and we are joined by Robert Drummond. He's the CEO of NexTier Oilfield Solutions. Thank you for joining us, Robert. If we can, we really would like to get started by asking you what NexTier Oilfield Solutions provides for the industry.
Well, first, Jessica, let me thank you and Brian for the opportunity to join you. We appreciate the interest in our company. We created NexTier back in November of 2019 with the merger of Keen Energy Group and C&J Energy Services. You know, we're a U.S. land-focused company. We are present in all the basins across the U.S. with our largest positions in the Permian. You know, we have recently put the two companies together. We rationalized all of our assets, and we currently have 2.2 million horsepower and 45 frac fleets. We think that's number 2 in size in U.S. land. With that, we integrate our pump down perforating wireline platform, and we have 118 wireline units for pump down perforating, which we think is the largest in U.S. land, supplemented with 25 coiled tubing units and 100 cement units placed around the U.S. You know, at Keen, we had began operations in Q4 last year, operating in Saudi Arabia via our partnership with U.S.-based NexTier, which we've been very excited about so far. But the rationale for putting the two companies together was basically to improve, you know, our cash flow potential and basically fortifying our balance sheet. And supplemented with the merger was the ability to take out about $125 million of cost synergies. And in the sector today, many people can appreciate the need that we have for consolidation. It was a first step for us to do so. We've been very successful in capturing those synergies, and I would say we ended up with a very strongly staffed company because we had the opportunity to create the best team from two companies.
That's great to hear, Robert. And of course, the past several weeks and few months has been something no one could prepare for, anticipate for, if you will. How do you see the recovery playing out for oil field service providers?
You know, as you would expect, the recovery for oilfield services is directly linked to the outlook for our customers. And for them, it depends on the global supply and demand balance for oil and ultimately the price of oil. You know, global inventories, they're probably headed to record highs during this economic response to the virus, which has resulted in, very weak activity for oilfield services in the U.S. and for that matter, all across the world. But we expect it to take a while, though, for these inventories to work their way out, despite the fact that recently, we have oil price moving in the right direction. We're starting to see the operators who had shut in oil production in the U.S. turn some of that production back on. And we think that's a precursor, perhaps, to operations beginning to increase as we move into the latter part of the summer. But we also believe that the service provider is going to have to adapt our company cost structures to the current low activity levels, but while also maintaining the resources necessary to respond to the future opportunities once everybody goes back to work. So that's kind of what we're focusing on at NexTier, and we believe we're very well positioned to take advantage of it. When you look at the liquidity we have after putting the two companies together, the strong talent group that we now have in place and reorganized to deal with this low activity level while maintaining our ability to expand when activity returns. We put in some programs to manage our warm stacked assets. As you can imagine, the change in activity levels has created the need for doing that, and we've centralized that and overlaid it with some of our digital programs so we have the ability to know what is the status of our assets as it's being maintained while being warm stacked. And then lastly, I would say innovation during even the slow parts of the downturn, continually deploying our digital platform so we can become more and more of a data-driven company. So it's a interesting environment that we've been through, perhaps a quicker downturn than we've ever experienced before, but I think ultimately it's going to make us stronger.
And Robert, you mentioned the inventories and how companies are kind of starting to slowly turn back on production. But what do you think it will take for operators to ramp up new drilling activity to a level that's profitable for both operators and service providers alike?
Well, certainly, Brian, activity levels are linked, to oil and gas prices. And as oil prices recover, the operators are going to go back to work, and we're starting already to see some of that. But we're focused on continuously improving our own cost efficiency and competitive profile so that we're better positioned to help our customers continuously improve their dollars per barrel delivered. You know, we can do this, and we are doing this by providing more production for each dollar spent, be it delivering either more frac stages or more oil and gas production per frac stage. You know, I mentioned it a bit before, but over a year ago, while we were still keen, we accelerated our investment in digital to create more data-driven management systems. And, you know, as a predominantly U.S. land completions company, mostly around frac, a large percentage of our cost, you know, they're associated with operating and maintaining an extensive mobile network of people and machinery. You think about optimizing staffing, you know, improving maintenance practices, reducing early equipment failures, and streamlining the supply chain. This is really enabled by having real-time visibility with digital technology. And it puts everything, you know, completely within our own control for improvement. So we just think that the opportunity to competitively differentiate is becoming even more apparent through this process. So really what I'm saying is that the industry levels are driven by oil and gas price, and we're working together as an industry with our customers to continuously drive efficiencies that lower the oil price is required to create profitability activity levels for innovative service providers and operators alike.
And how has NexTier managed its operations during the COVID-19 pandemic? What precautions has your company taken?
We appreciate that question, particularly right now. We've been very proactive early on from the very beginning, and we work closely with our customers in developing and following strict protocols, primarily around field reporting and screening prior to starting the work. And this has enabled us to keep our operations safe and steady throughout this whole process. And when you think about an operation profile across U.S. land where operations reduced by 70% in a short period of time, it would have been easy for employees to get distracted, but they didn't. They followed the protocols, and we were able to install some precautionary quarantines throughout the process, you know, of several weeks that impacted, you know, maybe a couple of hundred or less of our, you know, 4,000 employees. So being proactive allowed us to be productive, but it also kept our people safe. But another interesting part I thought was the remote work and work from home process that many of our support people and management did. And I mean, I was really surprised that we were significantly more productive and efficient than maybe I would have predicted. And that's maybe behind us mostly as we've been transitioning back to work lately. And that whole process kept our employees safe, but we may adopt a little bit of what we learned during this process going forward and give people and our company a little bit more flexibility when they have the opportunity to work from home.
And sort of asking you to look into your crystal ball a bit, what do you think the oilfield services sector will look like on the other side of the recovery? How do you think it will adapt?
I think that's a good question. And, you know, historically, OFS, it's been driven by industry cycles, and usually the recoveries are relatively intense and rapid, and typically recover enough so that nearly all the OFS companies can become profitable again, historically. But since 2015, you know, I would say though, there's been more available supply than demand for services within our sector. And this was even before the COVID-19 response. This has slowed overall the growth investment into the sector, and I believe put more focus on sustaining and strategic investments. And what happens there, I think, is that the trend for the sector is towards lower or less capacity and better efficiencies. I think that works well in time for the operators and the service companies. But in the meantime, I would say it's been apparent to us that the operators in U.S. land particularly have been moving in the direction of selecting service companies as partners that are adapting to this trend. this trend of doing things more efficiently and sustainably. And I think this trend is going to accelerate because it helps the E&Ps improve their returns, often measured in dollars per barrel. So that's kind of the way we see it evolving, and we like it because we stay, somewhat in control of our own destiny.
And Robert, in many ways, the drop in demand resulting from the pandemic, combined with the recent price war we know affected the U.S. shale industry more than many others. So what role do you think North America shale will play in the global production picture over the next few years as we move forward?
I like the question. The U.S. shale unconventional oil and gas business has been proven to be extremely resilient. And I personally believe it's going to continue to do that in the future. The U.S. oil and gas industry has shown the ability to grow production, and it's somewhat unique globally. And it will again be needed in the future, I think, to meet global demand. No other place, I think, regionally can respond with quick production the way the unconventional can in the U.S. But when you think about the global reductions in D&C drilling and completion spending, during COVID-19, I think this is going to have a major impact ultimately on oil supply. You combine that, with regional reservoir production declines that vary, and regional production growth capabilities that also vary. For example, the difference between major offshore projects that take years to develop, while unconventional shale reservoirs in the U.S. market, they can increase production much more quickly. So we expect to see this happen, as demand for fuel returns and inventories decline. With the restarting of the economy, the draw for U.S. is going to come back. And this is why I really like our U.S.-centric position at NexTier. Not being very global puts you in a different investment category, but being in a part of the sector that can move very quickly, we like that position.
Good take on that there. What about your plans for your workforce as demand recovers? How concerned do you think the industry should be about losing expertise, maybe as this cycle turns to recovery? Are there concerns there for you?
Well, look, NexTier is a service company, and we're only as good as our people. We recently formed, this merger of equals, and was fortunate to be able to select the best performing people from both companies. That's a very unique position to be in as a CEO, and I've enjoyed it. But unfortunately, like everyone in this sector, we've had to shrink our organization in response to these activity declines. And, as a result, we've got a workforce with more talent, concentrated expertise, drive, motivation to win. I mean, I've never seen one that I've been more proud to be a part of. And I have no doubt that we can rebuild, around a team of people like that. When you ask, should the industry be concerned? And I think yes, but I also know that we will collectively respond to the requirements when we've done it, so many times before. And, after all, who doesn't want to be involved in a winning system? And look at what the U.S. petroleum industry has achieved in the past 2 decades to becoming a leading global producer. So yes, I think we can handle it.
In the 2015-16 down cycle, many workers left the industry and did not return. If the crisis is prolonged, as some believe it will be, some say maybe up to 18 months, how difficult will it be for NexTier to return to its full workforce strength? Are there worries that you might not be able to find the experience that you need?
That's, a question we get often, Brian. I would just say that I'm 100% confident that we'll be able to address it. And for many of the reasons that I stated previously, I think that as we've had to shrink our organization, we've been careful to protect as much of the talent as possible, and being very versatile workforce. For example, you have supervisors in the field that would take a temporary demotion to become an equipment operator to allow us to concentrate the skill set. And then when activity returns, you redilute it and you put the guys back in the jobs they had before, and you're able to bring in some entry-level labor around that. So the playbook for doing it is very good. And I would just say from our position, enhanced a bit because we had the ability to do that with two companies at once. It just so happened to be related to our merger right before the virus impact.
You mentioned technology earlier. What staff roles or tasks do you see being replaced or at least augmented with technology as the industry begins to rebound from this?
I prefer to look at it from the perspective of continuously improving efficiency by utilizing technology, and specifically digital-enabled technology. As we, for example, try to become a more data-driven company, and our ability to do everything that we do more efficiently becomes obvious. Examples include reducing demurrage with our supply chain, operating equipment in a manner that reduces failures and the cost of maintenance, and staffing that is optimized to the job at hand, whether it be support people or people directly involved in field operations. These digital tools make the jobs safer, make them easier for the personnel, and I hope even make it more enjoyable place to work. And whether it be, for example, routing a driver around the dangerous traffic situations that's developed, or preventing a potential equipment failure via analytics, our people are benefiting from the transformation, and their earnings potential also increases along with the companies. And to give you an example, we have recently been rolling out NextHub, which is essentially our digital operations center, where we bring in from the field and all parts of the organization, really, engineers and technicians that manage and monitor the supply chain activities, the equipment maintenance and management, and the field operations all in the same hub. And we are close to rolling out our new facility, but in the meantime, we're operating in a step facility where we're going to move in, say, in a couple of months. But interviewing the engineers only last week and the technicians, they were really excited about the way this is changing their jobs. So I would think that the outlook for bringing people into the industry as the industry becomes more digital, more in the mainstream of the economy, is just getting better all the time for our sector.
That is good to hear, Robert. And finally, I do want to ask you, as a leader in the industry, do you have any words of advice or encouragement, if you will, for the industry overall, and also for, the oil field sector, the OFS sector, if you will, moving forward? What is our path forward?
I like the question. Recently, I had two daughters join the industry. Some people thought our family is not diversified, and it's true. They got married into gentlemen in the industry. So obviously in the Drummond family, we're very much pro in all the things that it enables for safe and efficient use of resources and all the things that it brings globally. So are we proud to be a part of it? Yes. Do I think that the energy industry has the legs to continue to provide careers for my daughters, for example? They're just getting started for their entire career. Absolutely. And do I think even in U.S. land and all the unconventional activity that we've been able to, create over the last couple of decades, I think it's going to be there for many, many decades to come. So I have a bright outlook. I think we've just been through a period that we've been blessed with a lot of supply. And, maybe we got a wake-up call during the COVID situation where we had both a demand and a supply shock. But having been in the industry, north of 35 years, I really do believe that when you have situations of underinvestment like we've had, not only during the COVID situation, but ever since 2015, we will ultimately see more pressure on the supply side. And as demand comes back into the economy, the activity levels are going to increase substantially. So whether you be an operator or an oilfield services participant, as an employee or as an investment or, as a career, I think we got a lot of good days ahead of us.
Robert, I really appreciate hearing that. It's good to hear the words of encouragement as we look forward on what this path will be. And we appreciate your expertise as well. I know I can speak for Brian and Hard Energy and myself. We appreciate it.
Again, thank you for the invitation. I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
For more Hard Energy videos, follow our social media channels.